And that is, I carry about in my wallet these mysterious but beautiful documents, and it is, after all, just a piece of paper. And it's true, I like the picture. It's some guy named Kaminsky. But I wouldn't put it on a wall because, well, it's not worth it as a picture. On the other hand, it is valuable. Here's again, philosophy consists in large part in allowing yourself to be amazed by facts that any sane person takes for granted. Now, here's an amazing fact. I went into a place yesterday, and they gave me the best beer in the world, and all I did was give them bits of paper like this, and it worked. You see, they didn't say, well, maybe you think it's money, but why should we care what you think? No, everybody thinks it's money. It seems to work. Okay, now here's our puzzle in its simplest form. There's a class of entities in reality that have an objective existence, even though they're created by human subjectivity. That's the puzzle. How is that possible? How does that work? Okay, now I'm going to tell you, in answering that question, I'm going to tell you something about the development of my own thinking in this regard. When I first started working on this, it seemed to me there was a rather simple way to answer the question. How do you get these institutional facts? Money, property, government, marriage, universities, cocktail parties, summer vacations. How do you get all of those out of a reality of brute physics? And it seems to me it was rather simple. You needed only three primitive notions to get to institutional reality out of brute reality. You needed the notion, first of all, of collective intentionality. It isn't just that I have a belief or an intentional action, but that we together share beliefs and share intentional actions. You need collective intentionality. And then you need this remarkable capacity that humans have to impose functions on objects where the function only exists because of the imposition. So I have a pocket full of objects that perform functions, where the functions are performed because of the physical structure of the object. But now here is the remarkable thing about human beings. They have created a class of these functions, of imposed function, where the function is performed only in virtue of the collective recognition of the object or person as having a certain status, and with that status, a function that can only be performed in virtue of that collective recognition. Now that last sentence was so long it sounds like German philosophy, so I'm going to say it over again, or something like it, because this is a basic idea of this whole lecture. Human beings have a remarkable capacity that, as far as I know, no other animal has. And that is, lots of animals can impose functions. Birds build nests, and beavers build dams, and primates use stick to get their food. But there's a remarkable capacity that humans have, and that is to create functions that people and objects can perform, where the function is only performed in virtue of the fact that there is a collective recognition of the person or entity as having a certain status, and with that status, what I call a status function. So our question is now narrower, namely, how do people create status functions? And that is the question of how they create human civilization, because they create nation-states, political parties, literary movements. They create universities, cocktail parties, summer vacations. They create money and property and government and marriage. All of those things are status functions. They're all cases where the person or entity in question can perform a function only in virtue of having a certain status where that status is recognized. Take cases that you're familiar with. Barack Obama is President of the United States. That gives him enormous power. where does the power come from? He's not stronger than anybody else, and his DNA doesn't contain any code that says President of the United States. No, he's President of the United States very crudely because we recognize him as the President of the United States. Their collective acceptance makes him the President of the United States, and that gives him enormous power. That's the status function. Now, I want you to be astounded by this characteristic. Animal societies have hierarchies. They have alpha males and alpha females. In fact, not all that far from here in Leipzig, there's a wonderful primate study lab run by Mike Tomasello. And you can see, if you visit Tomasello's primates, you'll see, yes, there is a hierarchy of the alpha male and the alpha female. And the alpha male every day has to be willing to fight for his position as alpha male. He forms allies with other primates, and they can beat off competitors. Barack Obama doesn't have to worry about anybody beating him in a physical fight. He has to worry about somebody beating him in an election, another set of status functions, but he doesn't have to think, maybe there's some guy in the White House who's got stronger arms than I do, who's going to beat me in arm wrestling. No, he doesn't have to worry that, because he has a recognized status function. Now, how does that work? How do we get status functions? Well, at one time, it seemed to me it was rather simple. And by the way, one of the constraints on the analysis is it's got to be a simple mechanism. Human beings aren't smart enough to apply some complicated mechanism. It has to be something fairly simple. And it seemed to me, at one time, that I could make a fairly simple analysis that went as follows. We're talking about institutional facts, and we need a distinction between institutional facts and brute facts, between facts like this stone is next to that stone, or the earth is 93 million miles from the sun, and institutional facts such as I'm a professor in Berkeley, you are citizens of the Czech Republic, I owe so much money in income tax. Those are institutional facts. And in order to explain that distinction, I need a distinction between two kinds of rules that I call regulative rules and constitutive rules. Constitutive rules don't just regulate, but they constitute the very activity that they regulate, because engaging the activity consists in following the rules, or at least a large subset of the rules. So you need a distinction between the regulative and the constitutive. A regulative rule would be drive on the right-hand side of the road. You can drive without following that rule. But some rules don't just regulate, they constitute the very activity that they regulate. The philosopher's favorite example is chess. It was not the case that a lot of people were pushing bits of wood around on boards, and some genius said, fellas, we need to get some rules because you keep banging into my knight with your bishop, or you keep knocking my rook over, and so on. No, that's not how it was. Because playing chess consists in acting in accordance with the rules, or at least a large subset. That's different from the rule, drive on the right-hand side. Okay, what's the structure of these constitutive rules? And it seemed to me that though the actual formal structure that you might get in a syntactical statement of the rules, the kind of thing you get in law books or rules of games, though that varied, there was a common underlying structure, and the common underlying structure was X counts as Y, or X counts as Y in C. So take chess. Such and such a move counts as a legal knight move. Such and such a position counts as you being in check. Such and such a form of check counts as checkmate. Checkmate counts as winning. In each case, you have the X counts as Y in context C. Even though, as I said, that's often disguised by the actual syntax, that's what's actually going on. And that seemed to me characteristic, not just of games like chess, but of society. So I count as an American citizen, because I was born in the United States. As an American citizen, I count as someone who's